Welcome everybody to the BIDE, the podcast of Barcelona International Dance Exchange. Today in episode number 91, we are with Anna Arthur. Highly active in the arts and theatre, Anna studied at the Dartington College of Arts in a beautiful part of the UK. She worked as a technician and stage manager before being appointed as project coordinator at the Place Theatre in London. She's worked many years at the Place in a number of roles in management, fundraising and administration, and for various resident artists. She's also worked at the Dance Umbrella and Riverside Studios and founded Croydonites Festival of New Theatre in 2015. She currently runs Croydonites and is the administrative director of Aerowaves, a European network of contemporary dance venues and festivals committed to nurturing young artists, which hosts the annual festival Spring Forward. Welcome, Anna. We're so happy that you're joining us on the BIDE podcast today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I don't normally get asked to do things like this, so it's exciting and nerve-wracking in equal measure.
Oh, well, relax. I'll go easy. And it's a pleasure. It's our pleasure to have you. So first of all, let's start with, where are you? Where do we find you in the world today?
I am in a town called Croydon, which is in South London, and it's about 12 miles from the centre of London. It's very easily, we have great transport links in Croydon. We're very easily in the centre of town in about 20 minutes to Victoria or London Bridge. But we are a complete town. We have a town centre and a town hall, and a terrible reputation. But I think that really bonds us very closely. People get very protective of Croydon.
So what's the reputation? Can I throw in a...
Oh, well, so Croydon is known as a dormitory town. So people would sleep here and then commute into London to work. And it got bombed very heavily in the Second World War. And so we have a lot of big grey concrete kind of brutalist architecture, quite ugly. We actually don't have any limits on how high, well, there are some limits on how high you can build buildings, but London in general, it's not like you don't get a New York skyline, you can't build above a certain height, but we don't seem to have quite those same limits in Croydon. So we have some quite tall buildings. In fact, they did make a film in Croydon. It had Ewan McGregor in, and it was set in New York, and it was using some of the skyscrapers in Croydon as the New York skyline.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, but it's the home of Kate. I mean, Kate Moss is from Croydon. She's probably our most famous export. David Barry grew up down the road. Yeah, it is known a bit for, well, actually, we don't have the worst knife crime in London. We're known for being a bit rough around the edges. But for me, that's what makes Croydon such a gem, actually. I like the variety. I think you get these beautiful English villages, don't you? And I think, oh, it must be lovely to live here. And then I think, oh, I bet it's really boring. I bet it's really lovely for a while, and then it's really boring. I'd much rather have like a Russian deli around the corner, or a Turkish supermarket, or a, African market to visit on a Saturday. So yeah, I'm very fond. I wasn't born here, but I've been here over 20 years. I'm very fond of it.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that diversity within the area within which you live is great. Yeah, I have to say I am a massive fan, and I've recently relocated back to the countryside, so it's a stark contrast, I will say. Amazing. Well, you touched on something there. So who is Anna? So we've just had a lovely kind of insight into Croydon and where you live. What about Anna Arthur? Who is Anna? You said that you didn't grow up.
These are big questions.
I know.
Well, what am I? I'm middle-aged. I was born in the north of England, but I grew up in the south. I've got 3 children. Two of them are adults. One's just finished university. One's just got off to university. One's just left school, starting sixth form college. I've got a dog. I love dogs. I've got a dog called Frank. I have never had a career plan. I've always fallen into things. I've always kind of thought, oh, that looks a bit interesting over there, and ended up kind of getting involved in stuff. I'm a bit of a serial volunteer. Yeah, I don't know if that... I try to I try not to take things too seriously. You know,
Best way to be.
in this industry, we're not saving lives. You know, are we? We're not saving lives. We're not even making films, which is, you know, if you mess up a film, it costs you a lot of money. We're not even doing that. So I just, you know, I like to tread lightly. I try and tread lightly.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, treading lightly, our next question is about what you bring to the performing arts ecosystem, I guess, the ecosystem within which you work. I take it there might be several ecosystems working alongside each other from what you've been saying. So however you want to interpret that, what are you bringing with this light tread, this light touch?
So, okay, so Aerowaves is my main job, and I have been doing that for a very long time. I was there right at the beginning with John when he founded it. And I think there's only about 4 years in the last 30 that I haven't worked for Aerowaves. And so what I bring to Airways is a really long sense of the history of the organization. And I am, yeah, it's interesting because when you're in something, I don't go around thinking, oh, I'm remarkably well connected in Europe, but I am remarkably well connected in the dance world in Europe. And I feel very fortunate because of that. But what do I bring? Oh, what do I bring?
This is your chance to be less modest and humble.
You know, I mean, I always think if you work in the arts, you have to be able to prepare. You need to be prepared to do anything and everything. You know, so when I came to starting Croydonites, which is the theatre festival that I run in Croydon, I suddenly realised that actually everything I'd done had kind of built up to this moment because I'd worked as a technician, I'd worked with artists and producing work, I'd worked for venues, I'd worked for festivals, I produced print, I've put together marketing campaigns, I do accounts, I do bookkeeping, I've built websites. I'm like, oh, I I have experience. I wouldn't say that I'm brilliant at any of them, but I have experience in this huge, and that's just because, I mean, with John, when we started Arrows, it was like, right, we need a website. Okay, I downloaded some free software and we built a website, you know, so that's just kind of how, when you haven't got any money, you have to be a little bit, well, you know, you just have to kind of get stuck into it. So I guess I bring a lot of experience in a lot of different areas, in different areas. I guess there's a phrase we have in English, isn't there, which is jack of all trades and master of none. Well, I think that probably describes me quite well. But I enjoy doing different things. I can't imagine ever having to work for somewhere where I had to kind of check in and out, you know, at 9 and out at 5.
Sure.
So yeah, does that answer the
That's
question?
perfect. That paints a really lovely picture. And I think I definitely relate to the jack of all trades saying as well. It's something I often say. So within all of this that you give, and it sounds like you give so much, you also described yourself, which I loved, as a serial volunteer. So it does sound like you do bring quite a lot to your context, without a shadow of a doubt, Anna. Where do you get your inspiration from? What inspires you? So I guess from within the ecosystem,
Bored
where do
really
you
quickly.
you get?
I get bored really easily.
Oh, amazing. Tell us about that.
Well, I mean, it's funny because I say that, and then I've worked for Airways all this time, but Airways has always changed. It's always taken on new things. I mean, we do a festival every year, but it's always in a different city, so there are always kind of new challenges. So I suppose I look out on the world, and I'm quite interested in lots of things. I'm quite interested in politics and economics and philosophy and sorry, what was the question?
Where do you draw inspiration from?
Ah, where do I draw inspiration from? For like draw inspiration to do what? To work or?
Yeah, I guess within decisions that you make, or but it sounds like if you get bored quite easily, and obviously the different cities must inspire you in some ways to stay with Aerowaves. So maybe you've already answered the question, I think, in a roundabout way. or even what inspires you in day-to-day life? You mentioned a few of your interests there.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. I can't answer that question because I'm not quite sure what it means. What inspires you? Like, I mean, like if I think about what if okay, let me think. Okay, I try and take everything back to first principles, but like I think okay, so when I wake up in the morning, what gets me out of bed? That what gets me out of bed is yeah, new projects. You know, walking the dog. um yeah, change, I think.
Yeah. And that's great. You know, I love the thought of why do I get up every morning, you know?
Yeah.
And it probably is Frank barking for his food,
Oh,
perhaps, or for a cuddle. What breed is Frank?
Frank is a Labrador Cocker Spaniel, and they call them cockadors because you can't be a Mongol anymore, can you? You can't be a big.
No, there are all these newfangled names.
So he
I
looks
have
very much like a Labrador, but just slightly smaller.
beautiful. My sister has Cocker Spaniels actually, and they're very lively dogs, but paired with a Labrador, I'm sure that's a lovely combo.
There he is sleeping. That's his area on the couch.
Oh, well, I'm very glad that Frank is an avid listener to the B podcast. He doesn't look quite as inspired right now. He's enjoying being curled up and having a little snooze on a sofa, just for the listeners. Amazing. So we have we call them, and this is unfortunately in English, this doesn't quite translate as well, but we have these possibilities, I guess, possibilistic, not a great translation, questions of what you have, what you leave, and what you take. And we can apply this to any of our contexts. It might be about what you have when you wake up in the morning, what you leave in as an impression in the day, I guess, with people that you encounter and what you take from those people. Or you might want to be quite literal about this within a project. So what do you have when you enter a project? What do you leave within that? And what do you take from each project that you do, I guess? For example, Croydon Nights Fringe Festival. So if I may, that's what I'd like to hear from you. What do you have, Anna?
What do I have? What do I have? Okay, so I I'm a cup half full person. I'm an optimistic person. I I'm a people person. I like people. I like meeting people. Um, I think I said before, like I don't take things too seriously, so I I I think I have quite a good sense of humor. So these are some of the things I think I bring. Things that I take. Oh God. I take. There's a description of it relates to kind of whether you're introverted or extroverted, and um like an extroverted person, when they put the plug in the socket they draw electricity, and an introverted person when they put the plug in the socket they drain electricity. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. Yeah.
Yeah. So I take energy from being in kind of group situations and being busy. And
Is there ever a time where you need space for yourself, or are you very much you like being around people all the time?
yeah, because you can burn yourself out. And
Mm.
yeah, I mean I notice it. So when we do Spring Forward, for example, it's about 5 days of being on, like completely on, where where from the moment you wake up you've got messages and emails and problems to solve, and people, and everywhere you go. And of course, because I'm dealing with all the artists and all the guests, everyone knows who I am, so everywhere I go I'm having to have conversations and like after that, after 4 days of that, yeah, I don't want to deal with anyone's problems after that. I need
You need to recharge, absolutely. And I think there was one more there. What do you leave? What do you think you leave people with when you've worked with them, I guess, because we're talking about being this people person.
Oh, long silences not good, are they? What do I leave? Oh God. What do other people say in answer to this question?
We've
I
had
want people to go away feeling like, I mean, let's take Spring Forward, for example. I want artists to go away feeling like they've had their time, they've been respected. They haven't been in a situation like that where you've got like 20, 25 different companies and 200 guests, and you want them, of course, what you want them to do is you want them to come away and then get a year's worth of gigs. That would be that would be the ideal, but that doesn't happen for all of them. But I suppose you want them to yeah, I want them to feel like they've made a connection, that Aerowaves is an organization which had their best interests at heart and did their best for them. Because if we can't do that, then let's forget it, let's go home. There's no point, yeah, it's great. Some artists come perform and Spring Forward, and literally like an artist that we had in Dublin, I mean, she's got like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years worth of gigs out of it. I mean, it's a brilliant work. It really is beautiful. But and for some people it just doesn't, it's just not their time. It's just not the right, it's just not the right time. But what was I going to say? I totally lost the point of mine. Yeah, but it's not all about having like massive success, is it? It's about like making connections and having conversations and sparking something that could happen. I mean, it doesn't always happen at once, does it? But yeah, I suppose experiencing, oh, that sounds really wanky, experiencing humanity, but just kind of
no,
like
but
appreciating in that kind of busy environment that these are all, we're all just humans, all kind of like, pottering around, trying to get on, doing our best. And yeah.
100%. And I think, I imagine that you leave quite possibly more than you realize, if I may say. And I'm sure the numerous conversations that you've had across the world, really, within your career there, and the opportunities through the festivals that you're so integral and intrinsic, to, I guess, is I'm sure there is a legacy there somewhere in terms of the artists and the connections that you've helped to facilitate.
I think what I've appreciated over the years is that there's always a power, there's often this kind of power dynamic. I mean, Airways is slightly unique in that the fact that we, the artists, it's an open call, artists apply to us, and then the work is selected by a group of about 45 people. So I can't offer you a gig in Spring Forward, neither can Elizabeth and Roberto, the two co-directors. It really is a big, and sometimes people don't understand that about the festival. It's not a curated festival, which is all going to kind of hang together beautifully. It's really an overview of what's going on in Europe. Oh God, why do I always do this? I've just lost my train of thought again. And we're all just, within this, trying to rub along. And I don't have, what am I trying to say? I like, if people see me as this big, all powerful person, then that's just not the truth. It's not the reality. And we do this. We do a little bit of kind of preparatory work with artists before they come to the festival, to just impress upon them that this is a great opportunity, but you have to know what you want. You can't just come into it thinking, right, I want to speak to like 100 people and I want to go away with 100 gigs. Like, it's just not going to happen like that. If you get to have good conversations with 5 people, then that's going to be, really useful. And or even just one really strong connection that might take you kind of somewhere. You have to totally buy into this and think a little bit critically, and not just feel like it's going to be done to you. Not because the people there don't want to do anything. Like, the people there are not all powerful. They're all working within their own strictures of like funding and priorities. And so yeah, it's just being able to navigate that. And now I've forgotten what the original question was.
It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. The questions are prompts for us to chat. And I think it's really lovely actually how you put that. And I think, that hesitation really to answer some of these questions speaks volumes, because like you say, it's you're a piece in a bigger machine. And I think that is really the definition of the industry itself, the creative industries. We're also interdependent and also there for each other. And I think that openness, but also knowing what your goal is probably the best bit of advice that young artists or new artists coming in trying to navigate this ecosystem or this world or whatever we want to call the industry is really vital, because it can be quite daunting. So yeah, I'm sure some of our listeners will really relate to and be thankful for that insight, because
I would never want anyone to think that Aerowaves just didn't have kind of human, voices, human people behind it, that, we're not a faceless kind of organization that can't be reached, or, you'll just get a kind of pat response from.
And there are many of those. So it's refreshing to hear that something that is so and has grown so big and reaches so far across the globe still has that human touch. So it's beautiful.
Sometimes you're like, when with 800 applications, you think, I mean, we can't give, when people don't get selected, there's no way we can give 800 individual responses. But I hope we never lose that, because that would be, that would be.
I imagine, do you talk as a full panel to, well, it's 45 people, isn't it, looking at applications? So do you communicate as a full panel? I bet there's some interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the way that it works is there's a huge amount of video watching goes on before the meeting, so that every application has been already watched in full twice. So the whole system we try and build in all these kind of safeguards, because you have to make quite quick decisions on things. And then that's because at the meeting we don't have time to watch works in full, so we watch works in extract form, and we break out into like 7 groups in on one afternoon, and then we bring work back. So we spend at least a day and a half as a full group watching extracts and discussing work. So there's a lot. I mean, we totally rely on it. We need our partners' local knowledge from their country, and sometimes you need a bit of context, because the video is not very good, because you can't always capture stuff on video, and so that's really important. And I mean, I don't have any experience in other networks really, but we're not a talking shop. We have a shared goal, and that if I say it doesn't, sounds so corny. People just like talk about the Aerowaves family, and when you work with people for 20 years, you are really happy to see them, and you can rely on them and ask them advice, and but it is a very friendly and collegiate and lovely environment to work in. I have to say, it is a highlight for me, the Aerowaves meetings.
Yes, and obviously testament to why you've stayed so long as well, I guess, and that it's part of you. So I can understand the family feel when you've been doing something from the very beginning, definitely. Have you ever thought about quitting in your journey?
Yes, well, I'll tell you a funny story, Zoe.
Please do.
So when after Brexit, after the United Kingdom voted to leave the European Union, of course, that means that now I'm in the UK, I'm English, and we can't apply for Creative Europe money. So we had to move Aerowaves to Ireland. Well, we had to move Aerowaves somewhere. We ended up in Ireland, which was a brilliant home for Aerowaves. And we weren't sure whether, John and I, who was the director at the time, weren't sure whether we could continue to work for Aerowaves, because there's a rule, which is that if you're this kind of central management of the project, like you're doing the accounts and you're giving out grants, you can't be a subcontractor. So it's like, so now the UK is a third country, do we become subcontractors? And it took us a long time to find the answer to this, because firstly, the EU is just run on pages and pages of guidance. I mean, like, you know, sometimes you ask what you think is a simple question and you'll get a link to a 500-page document and you just think,
Goodness.
oh, which is full of links to other guidance. You know, it's infuriating. And also, of course, no one had ever left the European Union before. So really they were having to kind of create policy and guidance on the spot. So it took a long time before we were deemed to be natural persons. So while this was all going on, so not a kind of a separate legal entity, but this is what they just call a kind of a freelancer, essentially. I think this is, they call them natural persons. So like, okay, great, so we can. But in the meantime, I just thought, okay, I'm going to have to leave Aerowaves. What am I going to do? I need a change. What should I do? What would be really exciting and interesting and useful? And I settled on teacher training, becoming a teacher. And I thought, okay, and we have shortages in certain areas, which are the sciences. Okay, that's not me. Computer, like including computer science, definitely not me. And the one that I highlighted on was geography, because I thought, okay, this is a really, with climate change and all the changes in the environment, this is quite a good time to be like looking at this subject. So like, I don't have any qualifications in geography, so I started to do A-level geography in order to start teacher training the following year. And I did my first assignment. I got 85%. I was very happy with that. And then we went into the festival in Elefsina, I think. No, it was even before that. Maybe it was even Ljubljana. And then I just never went back to it. It just got so busy. I never went back to it. And then John stepped down, and then Elizabeth and Roberto took over. And then I started to do a lot of traveling, and the whole idea just kind of floated away. So, and then and people kept saying to me, so you get to do all this traveling, and you're kind of your own boss, and you manage your own schedule, and you're going to go and work at secondary school and teach TVET. And I thought, oh yeah, maybe that's not.
Yeah, I think I'm, in a way, I'm glad that it was a natural like evolution away from that idea, but I can see where you were going with it. It's good to know that you have a backup plan, perhaps.
Yeah, I've got the backup plan. I just thought, no, what would be really interesting? You know, I think, oh, wouldn't it be interesting to like work in the law and like, you know, prosecute criminals, or work as a detective? I mean, you look at like work as a detective and hunt down, you know, I don't know. Anyway,
maybe
so
this is the theatre in you. Maybe you should have been an actress as well.
Oh no, yeah.
You could have been able to play a geography teacher and a lawyer and a.
There you go. There you go.
Absolutely.
That one-woman show is still to be written.
Croydon Night Festival 2028, starring Anna Arthur.
No net whatsoever. Just program yourself.
Wearing multiple hats. Okay, amazing. That's really interesting. It fascinates me what people would do, what they think about, what if I hadn't done the creative arts, what would I do? I find it fascinating, and we get so many different insights as well with that question. So thank you for sharing that. So this is the part I love. We have a rolling task, let's say, or challenge for you, which we do with all of our podcast guests, which is that we ask each podcast guest to propose a question that the following podcast guest has to answer. So I have got a question for you, which is coming from our previous podcast. However, I'd love for you, we can do it either way around. So if you have a question that you're burning to know about a fellow practitioner or creative or whoever we have on next, and I won't give you that insight yet, it's a potluck, then it would be great to hear that question, and then I'll fire my question away. Or if you need a bit of time.
I have a question. I have stolen the question from someone else.
Wonderful.
And it's, what are we not talking about that we should be talking about?
Fantastic. I love how open that is as well. So what are we talking about?
The final question that is always asked on my favorite podcast.
Would you like to share what it is?
It's called trigonometry.
Wonderful. I'm not familiar with it actually, so I may check that one out.
So two comedians
Hmm.
who created the podcast in lockdown, and they do 1 hour interviews, and they interview everyone from comedians, politicians, from the left and the right. They're really trying to have a really broad conversation. So, like, for example, they've had Nigel Farage on. I mean, a number of times they've had Nigel Farage on. They've had people, Paul Embry, who's a kind of very far left trade unionist. So you get a really, really broad. Like, the
Wow.
one thing that I've really tried to do in the last couple of years is to expand my news sources, because for many years I was just reading one left-leaning newspaper and listening to the BBC. And it's not until, and you think I'm getting really quality, and they are both quality, publications, and you think you're getting something that's really neutral, and then when you start listening to other things, you think, oh, actually there are so many more viewpoints out there, and I'm really like, I don't want to be kind of siloed. And the Trigonometry podcast came out of what happened after Brexit, and that there was this idea that anyone that voted for Brexit was automatically, a racist, or they were painted in a very particular viewpoint. And I thought, you know what, that I think that's probably part of the reason why we had Brexit in the first place. Like, whatever you think about people's opinions, when you don't listen to people, you don't have to agree with them, you don't have to accept them, but if you don't listen to people, people get angry, and then you get things that you wish didn't happen, like Brexit. And so I'm just trying to be a little bit more open, a little bit less kind of siloed in the things that I listen to, and it's been, yeah, very illuminating. I was going to say something else on that. What was it? I can't remember. Yeah, anyway.
No, that's fascinating.
Anyway,
I think
so it's trigonometry, so they're really trying to find a place, because the other thing is, it's when the establishment agrees with you, that's all well and good, but when the establishment doesn't agree with you, it's all right, it's all very well to kind of like, cheer on the establishment when you agree with them, but when you don't agree with them, then it's a very different situation. Voices need to be heard. Yeah.
absolutely, and your question definitely will hopefully encourage that a little bit on the very small scale of the BIDE podcast. But no, it is fascinating. And actually, I guess with your travel that you've done as well, you must see a myriad of points of different views and perspectives. And I think what fascinates me is how news is broadcast in different countries as well. Because again, it's all coming from, we won't go there because we'll go into some philosophical loophole of what is the truth, but we shan't.
But it's just fascinating what it tells you about people.
Totally.
I absolutely believe like that inherently all people are come from good places and have good intent. Well, not everyone, but
maybe not all.
For the most part, or people start off with good intentions, and it gets warped. But like, yeah, and we like, you look at the moment, my God, there's so much division, there's so much polarity, and I worry about, I look at America and I think, oh my God, and I just think, please, that, what America eats for breakfast, it eats for dinner, we get for breakfast, and I don't, I don't want to see that here. And it's all, we're already seeing it. We're seeing it all over Europe, aren't we? This kind of, everything's, becomes more and more polarized and divisive. So
it does. And I think it's really important to continue talking, because the minute we start to be, scared about opening discussions, and like your question, what are we not talking about that we perhaps should be, I think is a really valuable question. So your question from our previous guest actually links to this in many ways, and it gives you a little bit of power, Anna. So I think you'll like this, I hope. So the question is, if you were Minister of Culture, what would be the first thing that you would do when you arrived to office? It's a large question, question, I'm not going to lie, but I think it leads on really nicely from the discussion that we've just been having, actually.
Well, I mean, obviously, like, quadruple the budget for arts.
Yes, thank you. Anna Arthur for Minister of Culture.
That we spent more in during the lockdown. There was this scheme called Eat Out to Help Out, where you could go and get a meal for £10 and the government would pick up the rest of the bill. And it was a way to get people going out again. I think all it did was spread COVID, but well, no, actually I can't, no, scrap that. I can't say that. I don't know if that was really the, and I see why. I think I see the intentions behind it, but that costs more than more than double what we spend on the arts in a year. And I just think, oh, come on. Like have we learned nothing? Like the positive benefits, like, just far outweigh the cost. When you think about how much we spend more on ice cream in this country than we do on the arts, it's just like,
that's quite depressing. I know.
Yeah. So and I think at the moment, I think the biggest problem is it's just being decimated in schools. Like, the arts provision in schools is being absolutely, it's the first thing to go. Like we in Croydonites, we've been working with a school locally who offer GCSE drama but don't actually have a drama teacher. So it's the English teacher that teaches drama. And they do it very well, but it's just that kind of, it's just not seen as essential. And I understand why it's not seen as essential, but it's just so enriching. And after we have a roof over our heads and food to eat, and warm houses, then what? We need something.
Yeah.
You feed our minds and our hearts and our souls. And yeah,
absolutely. And the life, I mean, going back to Dartington College of the Arts, the life that you have had since then has shown you so many places and people and these conversations. It is enriching. I think there's no avoiding the fact that the arts is a ticket to that level of enrichment. And you said at the very beginning that, we're not saving lives. We're not, but we certainly are enriching lives. And I think it's, and that surely is something that should be invested in a lot more. So yeah, I'll definitely be canvassing for Anna Arthur, Minister of Culture, when I see the call out. So I'll be your fan.
So hopeless. I'm so tactless and undiplomatic. I'd be absolutely, like, the press would just hang me in the first week, I think.
Oh no, I'd be the one shouting supporting your corner from a distance on the B podcast. No, I'm sure it's very difficult when you're in that situation to try to make the right choices. Yeah, but it's nice to dream. So we are coming towards the end of the podcast. Thank you so much. This has been a really amazing chat. We need to come up with a title for this podcast episode. And again, something that we love doing is reflecting on the conversations that we've had, reflecting on this kind of moment in time. How would you capture it in your true fashion, let's say, for your title of your podcast? That sounded ridiculous, but go for it.
The ramshackle Confessions of an Arts Administrator.
It couldn't be more perfect, Anna. Thank you so much. I've absolutely loved it. I could chat to you all day, and hopefully we will chat again very, very soon. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us on the 91st episode of the B podcast. We cannot wait to see you again soon, and we wish you all the best with your projects, multiple projects as well. And hopefully I'll make it down to parts of the festival as well in Croydon. Yeah, it'd be wonderful. And maybe we'll have a little feature. We'll certainly give it a plug for you on our platforms.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.